survive another.
Hello everyone. Yeah, Mr. Pickles will be here. There he is. There he is. He just arrives in the nick of time. And
When people turn up late.
But sadly, Dr. King will not be joining us tonight. Longshanks CPG has a different work arrangement in the next couple of weeks, so he won't be joining us. However, it just so happens, as if he had efficient foresight,
magic.
Yeah, that he at the end of last adventure, he sort of like separated himself away from the group, so he's actually somewhere else, which I'll talk about in a second. But before we go any further, and before I give you a synopsis of the investigation so far, I'll allow the players the opportunity to introduce who they are and who they will be playing. And we'll start off with you, Mr. Pickles. Go.
I am Mr. Pickles. I am playing Melvin Bleaker, a librarian who is most certainly male, kind of a historian, occult expert, though expert might be a strong term. He's just somebody who is a librarian and very interested in those kind of matters. He's kind of a non-talkative character until he gets a drop of liquor in him. But other than that, he's not too terribly offensive. He likes things clean, which has been unfortunate because we've been in a rather filthy, era, I guess, might be the most accurate thing.
That is true.
He doesn't like filth, and one of the filthiest places. Now throwing the microphone over to Chugawugga. I'll let you continue.
Hi guys, I'm Chugawugga. I play Willard Peabody. He's a artist and photographer from the more fashionable part of London, Privy Gardens. He's currently trying to work himself up through the social ladder, starting off as a middle-class, working-class man. He is trying to obtain the rank of an upper-class gentry. Money is always a key part of his endeavours, and he's gone through various lessons so that he speaks properly and his manners are correct, so that he blends in. And I will pass on to Inwards.
Thank you. It's really interesting because even when you're talking, my mic volume is flickering, and I'm thinking, why is that flickering when nobody else is talking? Let's just have a look.
You got music playing in the background?
No, I don't think so. It just seems a bit strange. But no, I don't know. I will not worry about it, and I will just forget about it because it'll be on for the rest of tonight in any case. So, the investigators have been hired by an attorney, a solicitor in London, Victorian times, 1888, to travel out to Darkmere to a place called Bargrove Hall, where Lady Allingham is convinced that her house is haunted by her recently deceased / murdered quite brutally husband. The party arrived and have managed to live through 2 nights of somewhat strange occurrences, including blood dripping off a portrait of the Colonel, Sir William, or also a whole load of nastiness, things being moved, things being knocked over, hideous dreams, etc. Anyway, at the end of last adventure, things came somewhat to a head, in the sense that Ursula, Lady Allingham's daughter, went missing. And she was last seen by James Mackenzie, who's the carriage driver, out by the pond in the back of the estate with a young boy, a young man, so to speak. Now, just as they were Mr. Mackenzie was preparing the sleigh, because they're out on Darkmere and it's in February and there's now started to snow, and the villagers arrived and very agitated from the nearby Bargrove village. And on attending the village, the investigators suddenly found out that more children had gone missing, but at the same time there had been quite a gruesome massacre in the outsider's house, the group of people that Sir William brought in to remove a standing stone in Hobbs Field, which was knocked down but is mysteriously back, and that's where Sir William's burnt body was actually located. As well as finding the blood, etc., the investigators also found a stone knife, I think it was, probably dating back to about 3000 BC, so like Neolithic. And Lady Allingham had gone insane after the loss of her. Ursula had gone missing, and Dr. King has remained up at the house to see whether or not he can do anything for them. Now, before we start off, guys, you need to roll your luck rolls if you used any luck from last week's session. So remember, you're rolling 1d100 and you need to get greater than your luck, and if you succeed then you add 1d10 to it.
Okay, so Willard's current luck is 20.
Okay. Yes, nice. So 1d10.
So he gets 7 points back.
Yeah, cool.
Melvin's currently at 42.
42.
Rolling. Nothing for me.
Oh, never mind. Nothing for you at all. What does that put people on as luck?
27.
42.
42. Oh, plenty then. Plenty. So I'm going to just slide you over to the map of the area. This is the map that you've seen before. So just to refresh your memory, this is Bargrove Hall. And if you remember, the Darkmere is where the gypsies normally camp out. Here's Bargrove Village, which has various links to the past, and out here is Hobbs Field, where the standing stone was. Here's the prison over down at the bottom, and this was Princetown, where you first arrived at the beginning. So yeah, sorry, I've just realised that I don't have Realmworks open, which is a necessity, so I can see all the links. So yeah, so I think last time we left it, you were actually at the village, is that correct?
Indeed.
Yes.
Yeah, okay then. So I think you have just discovered the gruesome parts of body, should I say, but also the stone knife, and you were asked to go there by the Reverend to see the massacre there. So I'll just put you on to the map, so you should be able to see if it loads in. There you go. Could be a good one if it doesn't load in all the time. Yeah, so you can see the map there. Remember that the number 6 out here, those are the outsiders' houses that you actually found. The blood massacre, the blood out on the snow, and the stone dagger. So is there anything anybody would like to ask before we make a start?
We did make sanity rolls because we did have a look in the houses, and I think Bleaker went in and got the knife. And from what we saw in it, did we see like human body parts? You know, did we see an arm here or a leg there? Or
the bodies are. The best way to describe it is that it looks like they've been almost like torn apart. Mangled. It doesn't look like somebody's been very surgical about it. It seems as if they've sort of like been hacking or pulling, and I think if I describe it as, it looks like there's been an attack by a wild beast or something like that. That's probably the best description of it, rather than being cut to death or anything like that.
Okay. No, that's and I take it that currently the mob that are the villagers are down, sort of like with us.
Yeah, they came down with the Reverend and with you guys to see what was going on, because they wanted to demonstrate. And if you remember, they also showed you where the 4 children had been kidnapped from, which they appeared to be playing out in the snow, just the same as Ursula was when they were kidnapped.
Okay, and it's from what I can recollect, it's early morning, because Ursula had just been out for her daily.
Yeah, it's a little bit later than early morning
we've had
now.
to come down to the.
Yeah, it's a little bit early. It's probably coming around sort of like 10 or 11 o'clock. But the strange thing that you notice is that the whole area is quite dark and gloomy. There's sort of like thick, heavy storm clouds of snow overhead, and the whole area is quite chilly and frost laden and snow laden. So it's definitely, it almost feels as if it's almost like dusk rather than coming up to midday. There's no sign of the sun. There's a bitterly western wind northeasterly wind coming down from over Scandinavia down across the moor at the moment.
There's these storm clouds or whatever they are. They're not
snow clouds. Yeah,
snow clouds. They're not sort of like in one area. It's just general weather.
Yeah, it looks like it's just sort of like spread across the moors across Darkmere at the moment.
Okay.
Would I be able to? Oh, go ahead.
No, yeah, okay.
Would I be able to examine the stone knife? Would I have to go up in there and pick it up, or
you did last?
Okay.
Yeah, you've actually got it with you. So you probably got a handkerchief or something like that to pick it up. Rather than, I mean, you're quite knowledgeable. You know not to disturb the scene of a crime. But you've got it probably in a handkerchief in front of you now.
After cleaning off enough that I can look at it, would I be able to use history or occult to learn anything more about this knife if it had a certain purpose?
Yeah, you can roll either or. It's completely up to you.
As he's sort of like looking it over, Peabody's there as well, and he's going to say, "Well, it doesn't look like the type of knife that would actually cause that amount of destruction. I've seen the savages use them in the African wars, mainly used for gutting, though."
Yeah, Mr. Bleaker, you recognise this sort of stone dagger. It was very popular in ancient, like Neolithic times, for things to do with sacrifices. It's almost like a sacrificial dagger. It's mainly made out of flint that's been chipped away at the sides. There's no sort of like metal or anything like that on it. And it's almost like a puncturing and cutting weapon, but it's not something that would be surgically smart. No, it was. You do remember from your cult world that it was used by druids, so to speak. That's what your books tell you, but it's definitely some kind of sacrificial implement.
Is flint a common stone type around Dartmoor?
Yeah, less so now in Victorian times, but many of the standing stones are actually used or are carved out of flint. So it's something that is well used, and in Neolithic times it was the only thing that was used to cut, slice, or animal skins and furs, etc.
It seems like it would be inefficient, Mr. Peabody, for this kind of mess.
So, what are we talking? Wild animal?
Yeah, I'm guessing a bear. That's only.
Are there bears on Dartmoor?
I don't know. I don't read too many animal books.
You can roll a no roll if you wish, and I can give you the information.
Intelligence, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, you both know that in the olden days, in the wilds of England, especially of Dartmoor, there was thought to be bears and wolves across the countryside. Apart from that, just so you know, the Beast of Dartmoor story hasn't started yet, but it's definitely, no bears have been seen around here for several decades, almost like centuries now, and same with wolves.
Best talk to them, Bleaker. And he's going to sort of like make a sort of like an overall gesture of the villagers that are sort of like congregating. Best talk to them. Don't want to mob. Well, they don't talk kindly to folk like me. Best coming from someone like you.
I suppose I can
find out what they know. We don't want to mob on our hands, do we?
I suppose not. Yes. I'll go out and talk to them right away.
Get on top of the cart. Get on top of the sledge. Stand up there, man.
Yeah, so you, as you come out of the outsider's house, the villagers are not sort of like miles away. They're sort of like, you can see where the road is around the house, and they're sort of like stood there. So they're hearing what you're saying, no problem at all. They're all sort of like wrapped up, and if you remember, they've already come from the village out to Bargrove Hall, and the only reason they've probably come back here is because the Reverend suggested that they should come back. And so Mr. Bleaker, what would you like to say and or do?
I guess I'll look out to the crowd and say, this does seem to be a great mess, but it looks more like an animal. Townsfolk that would have done this. Has anybody seen an animal nearby? It seems unlikely that the gypsies could have done this.
They're sort of like various mutters going around the crowd, and you hear comments like, "We don't care what happened to the outsiders. Our main concern here, we want our children back. We don't care who did this. The outsiders probably deserved it. Let's go and get our children back." And you feel that the majority of them are not really interested almost in the possible deaths, or certain deaths, or possibly murder outsiders. They seem to be a lot more interested in getting their children back rather than anything else. The Reverend sort of like comes up to you, and he sort of like says, I do think that we need to go and see the gypsies in order to see whether or not they have the children.
Yes, I think you're quite right, Reverend, but I think if we go up there, especially with these folks in this frame of mind, I think that there could be needless bloodshed, and maybe even the children themselves would get hurt.
Yeah, and you hear people shouting back, "Try to stop us. We're going after our children. You can't stop us. We're not hanging around when our children are being kidnapped. We're not just staying around." And you notice that several of them are sort of like, especially at the back of the group, have turned round and started to sort of like head south along that path that you can see. And several of them are going to their horses or the mode of transport that they had, and sort of like started to saddle it up, ready to leave. And the Reverend turns around to you and says, I don't really think that we could probably prevent them going off.
Best we get there first, Bleaker.
Yes.
Mackenzie,
Yeah,
Make haste.
Mackenzie's some distance away, but you can see that the sleigh is still there with the horse on, and sure as you sort of like, it looks like you're heading off, then the rest of the villagers sort of like come together, and you notice that there appears to be almost like a mass exodus. Interestingly enough, they all appear to know where the gypsies are. It's probably because, maybe because they sort of like come on quite often coming out this, and you hear people shouting like, "Let's get to Darkmere. We'll show them that they can't just take our children, meddling gypsies." And there's definitely some kind of mob rule. Can you both make perception rolls for me, please?
Well, is that spot hidden?
Yeah, sorry, spot hidden. Yeah. Yeah, and Mr. Peabody, you notice that several of them seem to be checking rifles or revolvers, and a lot of them, other of them, seem to have either sort of like what would be considered as innocent farm tools.
Pitchforks.
Yeah, but now look quite menacing at them. It doesn't look like they're heading out there to talk. It looks like they're more out there to deal damage and probably to get their children back.
Okay, so briskly, Peabody is going to start heading over to the sledge, and once he's aboard it, he's going to say to Mackenzie, Mackenzie, Gypsy Camp, we need to get there before the villagers do. Mob mind, you see, mob mind.
Yeah,
trouble. There'll be trouble.
And Mackenzie sort of like waits for Mr. Bleaker to get in, and luckily for you, the sleigh, due to its construction, and is a lot quicker over the snow than either the people or on their horseback or their carriages, and you manage. Mackenzie drives it along the road, as you can see, and then branches off. Just sort of like, if you can see the map here. Just on that that curve in the road, and heads off to Darkmere, and it's not long after you leave the road and start to go across what appears to be quite flat, but indeed quite uneven terrain, that you see in the distance. There seems to be a fire still burning, and there seems to be 4 gypsy caravans, and they are the typical old-fashioned gypsies, and there seems to be quite a lot of activity in the camp. Just as you get closer, just roll your listen rolls for me, please. Yeah, so round the other way this time. Oh, Mr. Bleaker, you do hear sort of like several sort of like sounds or voices crying out, and one of them, you can definitely hear sobbing, and at some points almost like howling sobs, and you also hear, as you get closer, then there's sort of like almost like aggressive talk going on, things like bash their skulls in, break their bones, things like that, as you sort of like pull up next to the as closest to the caravan as you possibly can. And as it sort of like pulls up, you notice that several of the gypsies appear to be armed with both revolvers, but also very stout looking clubs made out of simple wood, but probably good enough to give you a hefty whack. And they almost like, there's 3 or 4 of them sort of like marching towards you across the snow, and they seem to be well dressed for snowy weather, and they appear to be walking straight towards you. Definitely. Can you roll a psychology roll, please, Mr. Bleaker? I think it's you that has this. Yeah, you sort of like see them coming towards you, and they don't look pleasant. They don't look like they're coming out for tea.
As we're driving up towards them, and we see them sort of like approaching. Peabody's going to say to Mackenzie in sort of like a lowered tone, he's going to say, "Armed, are you, Mackenzie?"
Mackenzie sort of like looks at you and says, "No." And your sleigh has stopped now, and it's almost like perpendicular to the approaching gypsies, the four of them, two with what appears to be revolvers out, and two with what appears to be chunks of wood. That will be the clubs, and you're actually perpendicular to them, walking towards you. You think Mackenzie's probably done this to sort of like almost like prepare for quick escape if need be. And the gypsies sort of like come not right the way up to the sleigh, but sort of like stands a little way off, close enough to probably fire at you. But there was one of them that appears to be almost like the lead gypsy, sort of like turns round to you and sort of like, "You're not welcome here. Be gone with you."
Peabody will turn to Bleaker and say, "Don't show fear, Bleaker." And he'll get off the sledge and walk round so that he's sort of like in between the sledge and the gypsies. And he'll say, "Now, see here. We don't wish you any harm. We're here for the children."
"You want to take our children? How dare you!"
"Good Lord, no.
You've taken one already and you've come back for the rest. I bet it's those villagers. They always want rid of our children. Well, we're ready for them this time."
You lost children too?
One of them sort of like turns round to you and says, "Yeah, and what's it to do with you?"
The town's full. Everybody's been losing children, and they think that you caused it. We came up here hopefully to smooth things over quickly, so that there's no more bloodshed.
You can either use a persuade or fast talk at this time.
Let's see. Let's go fast talk.
He sort of like turns. Do you wish to alter it or re-roll it? You can push it if you wish. I don't think you'll have enough luck to adjust it.
I do actually have enough luck, but I'd be losing like almost all my luck.
Okay.
So I got 42 points, but I think
oh yes,
I should push it.
Okay.
I don't understand what pushing it does.
Pushing it allows you to have a second roll, but it will be somewhat of, if you fail, it's somewhat of a negative effect. So say, for example, in the previous investigation, Mr. Webber tried to bash open a door, couldn't do it on the first roll, so he pushed his roll. So he actually barged it again, was successful, but crashed the door off the hinges. The door fell on the floor, and so did he. So examples with this, if you look in the actual rule book, I think it gives you examples of push rolls.
But if you fail, if you succeed,
that's all right.
That okay, I'm with you. Right, okay.
So I tend to make them up as I go along.
That's all right. I just didn't know whether or not it was sort of like, because you were pushing it, if no matter what, there was sort of like a negative to it, but you still got the information.
Pushing examples, getting up close and personal to the target, talking outlandishly. The keeper may ask for a different skill, so forth, and switching from one another to gain a second roll. Sample consequences of failing a push roll cause great offence leading to violence, outrage, or criminal proceedings. If an insane investigator fails a push roll, he or she begins hurling random abusive phrases to the people.
Ooh, well that's fun. I don't think I should push it here. No, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna push it. Bam.
Yeah, success. So remind me what you were saying again, because I got lost.
What was I?
Oh yes, that villagers have lost children too. Yeah, and when you say this, you notice that a woman from the caravan sort of like a circle comes rushing out to the men. She's obviously heard this phrase that that the villagers have lost children too, and she comes out and she sort of like wails at you, and she sort of says, "Help me get my Reuben back! My Reuben's been taken!"
Oh, I met Reuben.
Yeah, Reuben was the...
he was the one that turned up at the door.
Yeah, he was the one that turned up at the door that Mr. Peabody sent away.
We'll do our best. We're trying to figure out where all the children are, but the villagers are coming here to release their anger on you guys. You need to leave.
Yeah, and you do notice that Mr. Peabody, as you sort of like glance down the road, you can see that there seems to be a group of people working their way up here. They're still quite a way off at the moment, but they seem to have been able to grab flaming torches as well. So it's almost like some kind of a witch hunt going on. And they sort of said, one of the gypsies again turns around and says, "We're not leaving, not until we get our child back. If they want to fight, they can have a fight."
Well, I don't think that's really going to achieve anything. There's obviously children missing on all sides. There's even the little girl from the manor, Ursula, missing.
And roll a fast talk. Yeah, and he sort of like turns around. And do you wish to push it?
No.
Yeah. He sort of like turns around and says, "Good riddance to the Allinghams. They probably started all this."
How?
"Should never mess with standing stones."
Well,
I don't think that was the Allinghams, to be honest with you. I think that was the workers that they employed.
Exactly. Doesn't matter who's employed. It always goes back to the person who initiated the corruption.
What does?
Heaven help us now that they've been released.
Who's been released?
Yeah, and make a both of you can make a listen roll for me, please.
Oh yeah, I got that listening skill.
As you say that, Mr. Bleaker, a lot more gypsies are sort of like come out to join the sort of like barricade between you and the Gypsy Camp, but also almost like setting up some kind of barrier or some kind of defense against the approaching villagers. And you seem that when you sort of like mention that, who are you talking about, you hear various almost like mutters around the gypsies, and you notice that words like the little people, the shining ones, them from the hollow hills, and many of them gypsies are sort of like making the sign of the cross as they sort of like say it over and over again. You do notice that it started to snow a lot more.
You've seen the gypsies sort of like putting up barricades and seeing the mob approaching. Peabody will turn to Bleaker and say, "Good Lord, man, it's just like Walk's drift." And he'll turn around and get the rifle from the sledge. You're not going to achieve anything this.
Yeah, so you sort of like go and draw a weapon from the sledge, and you sort of like pull it out, and you hear several noticeable clicks as the the guys, the two gypsies with the revolvers, sort of like pull the hammer back, cock the hammer, ready to fire, and sort of like aim it at you. You all. Mackenzie looks very sort of like nervous, and he sort of like whispers to you, "I think it's time to go." And you can now see that the villagers behind you are on that curve of the road. You know where you left the road and headed off to the Gypsy Camp, and the passing of the sleigh is quite obvious. And one of the gypsies turns to you, Mr. Peabody, and sort of like says, "There's many more of us than you."
Indeed. But mind you, we fought against greater odds than that back in Africa. Where was Reuben when he disappeared? Was he taken from the camp?
He sort of like says, put the rifle away. Because they're literally, since Mr. Peabody came and went to the sleigh and physically brought out a rifle, they almost like saw it as a physical challenge or threat, maybe even that you're going to support the villagers, and they've now literally got their revolvers sort of like pointing at you, and sort of like say to put the rifle down. That's what basically they're saying.
People turned to him and said, "Don't be a fool, man. If you're not bothered about getting the children and would instead have needless combat with the villagers, then it looks like it's going to be up to us to go and find the children when you battle it out."
Yeah, roll your fast talk. Or persuasion.
Yeah, is there a persuasion? Oh, look, persuasion's better than fast talk.
It's easier to be honest.
You don't wish to luck or push it, do you?
Nope.
No. And they sort of like says, we'll find Reuben. We know where he is.
Where?
And they start to you sort of like see some more of the gypsies are sort of like come up to the front, and somebody sort of like whispers in the lead gypsy's ear something, and he sort of like half listens to them when he's got his revolver still sort of like aimed at you all, and he sort of like they start to back off. And they seem to be heading back to maybe not their caravans to escape him, but maybe horses or some other kind of vehicle. And they sort of like start to back off. And as they start to back off, you sense that the villagers are actually coming towards the sleigh now. And so the villagers are coming up, and you think probably the gypsies have backed off because they've seen the villagers coming towards you.
Peabody's going to get onto the sledge.
Okay.
I want to call after the gypsies. But please, what can we do to appease, make things right?
Yeah. So roll a fast talk, but you can roll it as +2.
So great dice. Yeah. Pow.
Yeah, so the +2 you actually succeed on with hard. So you hear one of the women, the woman who appears to be Reuben's mom. She seems to be very sort of like attached to him, and almost like seems to be really sort of like concerned for him. Just out of interest, you think there's probably about between 20 and 30 gypsies altogether. It's not just the first 4. And she sort of like is there sort of like sobbing, and sort of like almost like says, please bring I need to see my Reuben. I need to see where he's gone to. And you notice a quite small, wrinkled woman. She looks extremely old, perhaps too old to actually walk. And she sort of like, but she still seems to be able to struggle through the snow. and she comes up and she sort of like almost like grabs or pulls the weeping woman's sleeve and sort of like says, "Come back. We know where to find them. We know where to find them." And she sort of like almost like puts something like a stone into the woman's hands, and she sort of like looks at it and kisses it and then holds it tightly in her hands as if it's some kind of charm or something like that. And she sort of like starts to accompany the sobbing woman away, but before she goes, she's almost like stops and turns round to you and says, "You need to go to Eagle Tor."
Eagle Tor. Thank you.
Now, you ask Mackenzie about Eagle Tor, and he actually knows it. It's one of the standing stones that actually is nearby. I'll just reveal it to you.
We read about it in the history of Bargrove Parish, didn't we?
Yeah. Mackenzie sort of like says, "Eagle Tor. That's one of the tors," and he sort of like says, "I think there's 3, maybe 4 of them," and he sort of like points back at the approaching villagers and states that, I'm just revealing the location of the other ones for you. There's one that is almost like directly opposite, north, and there is another one, just to let you know, you'll see some writing, and the writing is just the TH of the word the more, nothing else. So
oh my god, TH.
That's a shining Tor, and of course you already know that there is. Well, I'll let you draw the conclusion.
One more, which is where
Hobsfield.
stone is.
Yeah, and you sort of like ask there to roll an idea roll, please.
Both of us?
Yeah. Yeah, you both suddenly aware, as Mackenzie sort of, as you mentioned about Eagle Tor, and you sort of like he sort of like points out the other Tors, and you instantly get the feeling of almost like the symmetry of their positions, and almost as if they're almost like aligned to something or someone. And you suddenly become aware that when the standing stone fell down or was torn down, it would almost like break the alignment of this. Mr. Bleaker, roll an occult roll for me.
I would love to. I'll spend 12 points.
Okay then. Yeah. You remember that sometimes tours like this are erected to in almost like ley lines to sort of like channel either good or evil or protect places, but you suddenly realize that with the knocking, if that was the case, the knocking down of the stone in Hobsfield might have actually broken maybe the protection or maybe the alignment and changed the energies around here of some description. You can see the gypsies are sort of like saddling up horses, and some of them are walking through the snow, and they seem to be heading off to Eagle Tor. And you also notice at that point the villagers are sort of like coming up behind you.
Mackenzie, we need to get to that Eagle Tor place as fast as possible.
Yeah, and
children's lives may be at stake.
And what you sort of like turn the sledge round, and you sort of like see the villagers approaching as you sort of like scoot off on your sleigh, and they've sort of like seen the gypsies heading off in one direction, and some of them head to the caravan, and sort of like you hear them sort of like start shouting, but the others appear to be heading off in pursuit of the gypsies. It almost like looked as if they were running away, or maybe going to a certain place where the children might be kept.
I don't understand what the gypsy said, Bleaker. They said that the child was missing, but they knew where he was.
It sounds like they believe that the child was taken by a known entity. They mentioned the shiny people, the little people. That coincides with what I read in the books. The fairies and pixies that are native to Darkmere. And if you look at the map, if you take out the standing stone and connect the lines between the tors, the line looks like it would go about through Bargrove Hall area. Maybe that creates some unnecessary occurrences.
Right, so what are you saying, man?
I'm saying we follow them to Eagle Tor. If there's anything there, we can surely save the children. They can save Reuben. We can end this bloodshed.
Maybe this Reuben fellow, he was because wasn't he seen with Ursula?
I don't know. What did Mackenzie say?
Well, Mackenzie said that he's sort of been led away by a barefooted youth.
Does Mackenzie, do you know the gypsy population very well? Would you have said it was?
Yeah, he's actually your sort of like flying along on the sleigh at the moment, and you sort of like shout at him because there's quite a breeze blowing, and the snow is still falling, and he's just sort of like shouts back, "Best to stay away from the gypsies."
I don't know if he's necessarily a good a good eye for. I don't know if we can necessarily believe his word that is definitely a gypsy that led him off. Could be one of the shiny people.
Yeah.
I was thinking more of the maybe the escaped convict, Bleaker. Maybe he's kidnapped some children, holding them up there, ransom and all that. Probably wants a carriage to London or even Dover.
As you're going through the snow, you start to see something out in the distance, because obviously you're approaching Eagle Tor at the moment, and there's two things that you notice. The first thing that you notice is that there appears to be some kind of bonfire burning, probably right where the Tor is, and if that was not strange enough itself, it appears that there's a multitude of gnarled looking trees have almost like, if you remember beforehand, you didn't see hardly any. There seems to be as if they sprung up out of the ground, and you notice that as you get closer, as you look further towards the burning bonfire and the Tor, you notice that there's various trees. They sort of like start off the odd one, but as you get closer and closer, there seems to be more sprouting out, or have sprouted out of the ground, but nothing close to the bonfire. Could you both make a listen roll for me, please? Okay, so you both hear this sound, and you sort of like coming down. The snow's coming down. You see the bonfire and the gnarled trees that have erupted out of the ground, and even the wind itself seems to be bringing not only flakes of snow into your faces and onto your exposed hands, but also the cry of what appears to be children, and they seem to be weeping and crying out for their parents. But on top of that, you hear a multitude of voices, almost like howling or chanting. And as you get closer, could you make sanity rolls for me, please?
Yeah.
So Mr. Peabody, Mr. Bleaker, you'll work with the occult. You're quite used to these horrifying sounds, but Mr. Peabody, although you've been in attacks in the army, you really do feel that this is almost like unnatural, and that the children are really sort of like being maybe tortured or prepared for some kind of sacrifice, and you lose 3 points of essence as you get closer and closer. And
essence.
Sanity, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
It is basically your mental essence.
Yeah.
Though.
Yeah, I didn't know whether or not, because I don't know the character sheet, I just didn't know whether or not 3 points, yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
Peabody's going to, as they're getting up there, he's going to make sure that the rifle is locked and loaded.
Yeah, and you sort of like get closer and closer, and then all of a sudden Mackenzie sort of like pulls back the reins of the horse, and you notice that he can't get in anymore because of these strange trees that have sprouted up, and you've never seen so many gnarled looking trees in your life. It's almost as if they sprung out from nothing, and every time you sort of like move and have a look around, it's almost like the flickering flames behind them almost like makes it that they're almost like moving. You can hear that the gypsies are not far behind you, and not very far behind those are the villagers. What do you wish to do?
We can hear the children sort of like crying, etc. Is it possible to get a sort of like a general location of where they are? Are they directly in front of us?
Yeah, directly in front of you towards the burning fire.
Okay.
Melvin would like to grab the paper he has on fairies, or if he took it, of course. He's kind of just holding it tightly, and I'm gonna leap off and run towards the bonfire as quick as I can to get to the children.
Okay.
No weapon drawn.
Okay.
Paper.
What about Mr. Peabody? What's your plans?
Peabody's just sort of like looks in shock as Beaker sort of like runs off clutching a book, and then looking behind him to see how far the gypsies are away. He's going to pull back the bolt on the rifle, make sure that there's something chambered, and then he's going to head off after.
Okay then, and you do notice that Mackenzie, you think, has heard the cries as well, and as you almost like head into the almost like the grove, you suddenly notice two things. And the first thing that you notice is the bonfire itself, and it's not actually a normal bonfire. It appears to be almost like some kind of I'm just loading it up for you. I'll bring it onto the sheet map for you in a moment. It appears to be some kind of wicker man, made out of woods and snared, sort of like woven in branches and things like that. And you also notice, I'll make it bigger, don't worry. You also notice that dancing round the fire appears to be.
Could you move it down?
Appears to be a whole load of almost like smallish people. They only stand to about the height of your waist, and most of them are naked or wearing a bare minimum amount of clothing, and they seem to be jumping around and howling and waving what appears to be bones or almost like bits of branches around, and they're sort of like chanting in a completely strange language. You hear that the whatchamacallit, it sounds as if the gypsies have reached your sleigh now and are coming in this general direction as well. What would you like to do?
How big is the wicker thing?
It towers a lot higher than you two. It's almost like you don't think that the little people could have constructed it. It's almost maybe that the trees around it have almost like twisted themselves and entwined themselves to sort of like make it up, if that makes sense.
And does it resemble anybody, or is it just obviously a human male? Is it, or human? Is it human?
Well, it's exactly what it looks like.
Okay.
And just roll a spot hidden roll. Yeah, you can have before you roll it, you can have +2 to it.
What do I do? Do I use the white one then?
Yeah. So you both succeed, and as you can see from the picture, as you're moving closer and closer towards it within the forest now, sort of like dodging out of the way of the trees, you suddenly see inside almost like the body of the wicker man, the children are actually inside it. And you can see that the little people are lighting throwing wood onto the fire, and the fires is sort of like round the base of it, sort of like catching a light to where its legs are. And you can see now, and it's quite horrific, that the children are screaming, and you suddenly realize if something's not done pretty quick, they are going to be burnt alive inside the wicker man. Sanity rolls, please. So you both lose some sanity at the awful sight. So Mr. Bleaker, you lose 2. Mr. Peabody, you lose 3. And you can see it, and you're sort of like moving through the undergrowth, these trees. I mean, obviously trying to get to them as soon as possible. And as you're moving through, you suddenly hear a scream from behind you. It's more of a cry of pain, and you sort of like look round, and what you see is unbelievable. You see what appears to be a branch from one of these trees that has jutted down and gone straight through one of the gypsy's bodies, and sort of like is almost like out of his chest, and he's sort of like holding it as if to say, good grief, what's happening? And he obviously cried out, and then the branch is sort of like lifting up, and he's almost like hanging there, slowly dying, as these trees appear to be coming to life. Sanity checks, please. Yeah, and obviously this pales into insignificance compared to children being burnt alive in a wicker man. However, you do notice that some of these branches jot out to you. Could you please, both of you make a dodge roll?
Oh, yeah.
So Mr. Bleaker, you see one of these branches. You sort of like see the people look back to the children, and as you do it, you see a branch sort of like coming straight down towards you. You almost like protect yourself with the piece of paper or the book and move slightly out the end. It just skims across your face as it goes down.
My roll?
Yes, you can do, by all means. Yeah, and you're also nearly the same role, but you can't get out of this at all. And one comes, you sort of like turn around and sort of like says, Mr. Bleaker, watch out! And you don't see the branch that is coming directly for you, and it whacks you on the side of your chest as it comes through. You take only 1 point of damage. However, it whacks you, and at the same time, because you pushed your roll, you you try to get out the way, and it whacks you and it knocks you down prone on the floor, and you take another 3 points of damage as you land on something quite hard, maybe a bit of flint stone or something else as your penalty for pushing your roll. You hear various cries now from the back as the gypsies are sort of like whacking at these trees, and you hear gunshots going off as well. What would you like to do?
Peabody's going to get up, and he wants to look through the into the clearing, and does any of these little folks seem to be in charge, or
no? They all seem to be. They seem to be in a circle, dancing around almost and chanting strange words, and almost like it's almost like they're sort of like distorted cries, and it's almost as if you're thinking, "Good grief, what on earth is this?" It looks like they're all sort of like equal. What would you like to do?
Yeah, he's going to push through into the. He wants to get to into the clearing.
Okay, then. What does Mr. Bleaker wish to do?
Two things, kind of one passive, one active. Passive thing I want to do, at least for the rest of the scene, if at all possible, is not look at the naked little creatures. I want to do my best to avoid looking directly at them. And if one is like to jump right in front of me and try and get in my face, I'll close my eyes rather than...
Okay. Yeah, so there seems to be much more concerned about the dancing around the Wicker Man at the moment. It's almost as if their frenzy is feeding the flames. So would you like to do any other action? You still stood up.
Yes.
Yeah, what would you like to do?
And without looking at them as best I can, I want to sprint down there with my book in hand. My goal is to use my flimsy librarian body to try and like bash down or break off one of the branches holding up the Wicker Man, hopefully topple it.
Okay, got you. So several things are happening while you're all doing this. So time hasn't stopped still. You're reacting all the time, and as you sort of like head forward. Sorry, Mr. Peabody, I forgot what you were doing.
I was just I was getting up because I was
prone. Are you heading forward as well?
And then I'm heading into
oh yes, with your rifle. So you sort of like look behind you, and there's also a lot of the gypsies' bodies appear to be suspended on various branches. It almost like looks as if they're sort of like tattered fruit, sort of like hanging on, and they seem to be impaled, and there's blood sort of like dripping and pooling on the snow underneath you, and you're sort of like heading towards it. And could you both make dodge rolls again for me? Okay. Yes, Mr. Bleaker, do you wish to use any of your luck? Have you got enough or not?
I do have enough, but I would like to push it.
Okay, then go for it.
If I may.
Yes, of course you may.
Okay, all of the gods, help me here. Save some children.
Oh yeah, and your push is successful, and Mr. Peabody, you sort of like running with your rifle, and because you've already been hit once, you sort of like almost like sense one coming at you. Just see it in your peripheral vision. At the last moment, you duck out the way, and Mr. Bleaker, you sort of like see one coming, and you sort of like dive onto the floor as it sweeps over the top of you, and then you quickly sort of like clamber to the ground. You can hear gunshots behind you, and as you're running towards it, Mr. Bleaker, try not to look at the people. Mr. Peabody, you notice something. You mentioned earlier whether or not anybody of these looked almost like in charge. Who was that? Yeah. Well, you suddenly realise that probably there is one. And it seems to be, it's a little person who's slightly taller than the rest, and he, from where you're looking, it just looks like he's walked out of the flames in front of you, and he seems to be wearing some kind of headdress or maybe a full face mask or something. And the weird thing about it, it definitely looks like it's got tentacles coming out. It might be twigs or branches, but it almost like looks as if the guy's got an octopus on his head, and these tentacles are sort of like stretching out and you're not too sure. They almost appear to be moving, and this guy sort of like steps out of the fire and turns around, and he's sort of like got his arms up towards, and the frenzy of shouting and howling is getting higher and higher and higher. Okay, I need one more dodge roll from you both until you break into the clearing. Right,
twins.
Yeah. Anybody using luck or pushing?
I'll use luck, which is 11 points. Just eating up my luck.
I'm going to use luck as well, which is
26.
26.
Yeah. Okay, so, and you notice now that as you're getting closer and closer to the camp, these attacks are becoming more, and you sort of like burst out in the clearing, and I think one of you was going to try to rush and try to knock the thing down.
That's me, yeah.
Okay then.
As soon as Peabody's through the clearing and seeing now that there's obviously what he considers as the chief.
Yeah.
He comes out of the clearing, and he almost, as he comes out of the clearing, the rifle goes up to his shoulder, and he's firing.
Okay then. So two things. Can you both roll spot hidden rolls for me first? Okay, you both notice instantly that you can see inside the Wicker Man's body, there's two very familiar faces in there. One is Ursula, and the other one is the gypsy that you turned away from the hall, which is Reuben. Sanity rolls, please.
Hey there, Ursula.
So Peabody, you succeeded, so you take 2 sanity loss.
Christ.
And Mr. Bleaker, you failed.
You take 3.
Hang on, I need to add 2 to that. And you take 7.
Nice.
Sanity losses. You suddenly realise maybe the person that you might have wanted to protect the most from this is actually crying out and sort of like stuck in there. Okay, let's go into initiative, guys. Just so we've got some kind of order to go in. I'll bring up the initiative tracker, and I know we haven't used this for a while.
What's initiative?
It's just your dexterity.
All right, as a percentage, yeah.
Yeah, but you've got a readied firearm, so your is dexterity. You have plus 50 onto your roll.
Do I still roll it and then add 50 on? It's not.
It's just your dexterity.
All right.
And just that's all it is. It's just so. Let me add you onto the tracker because you don't have your. Can you enter your dexterity into that?
I can't.
Maybe it's because we don't have our tokens on to click on first.
Okay, so you can't. So Peabody, what's your dexterity plus?
My dexterity is 60. If I've got plus 50,
so that's 110. Yes, Bleaker.
45.
45, and these are coming in at 39. Yeah, so cool. So Mr. Peabody, you fire first. So basically, I just need to. You are going to attack this guy. So you should have a firearm skill.
I do indeed. Now I don't have anything for what type of rifle it is. It was just one that.
Yeah. Okay.
I suppose it's maybe.
Hang on, I've got me.
Is a 0.4? No, it'll be.
It's probably an 8mm rifle, yeah.
8mm, right?
Or a .295 rifle.
Okay. I'll just fire it. I've got.
Just 1 second. Somebody's at the door.
Ooh.
Nobody ever goes to his door.
I wonder who it is.
I hope somebody hasn't crashed into his car. I
That would
shall
be
tell
upsetting.
jokes whilst we're waiting.
Yeah, and I'll laugh loudly at them.
Okay. Mr. Pickles,
Yeah.
what is pink, as in the colour pink, and hard?
Frozen beef tongue.
No, a pig with a flick knife.
Oh.
Your turn.
I have.
My turn then.
How appropriate.
What's big? Was it Jehovah's Witnesses?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah, I just went up to the door and went, oh. they ran. Yeah, sorry, what was I doing?
We were just discussing what type of. I thought it might be something like a 303.
Yeah, that's fine. That's an 8mm, isn't it?
Well, a handgun's 9mm, so an 8mm must be smaller than a.
.303. Is that what you said?
I would have thought so, something
Yeah,
like that.
and it's an 8mm rifle. Yeah. So what's the damage on that?
I don't know. Shall I see whether or not I hit first?
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah. Can I?
You
Can
can't
I-
pre-edge, no.
Can I aim, or is there anything?
No, it's just you just roll your thing. Yeah, so you let off a crack of the bullet of your rifle, and it sort of like rings out, but it doesn't hit the guy, but it does cause him to turn round as it pings off something. The
Turn's gone.
say again, sorry.
Have the turns gone or not? Did you put the turn order up?
Yeah.
We're in the proper order. I just don't see anything but zeros.
Yeah, that's okay then. I didn't know whether or not it was.
Can you not see the turn order?
I can see the turn order, but all I'll say is just zeros.
But we're in the proper order.
Yeah.
So it's,
No, we're not.
oh, yep, there's numbers.
You see them? Yeah, because Peabody, you've had your turn.
Right.
So you sort of like leveled your rifle and fired one off, and then so we're down to you, Mr. Bleaker.
Running towards, still going on my plan to break down the.
Okay then. So can you roll for me? Well, it's up to you. You can have a choice at this. You can either roll a luck roll, so you manage to get in and out of the little people as you go towards, or you can make a dodge roll. I'm happy for you to do one or the others.
Gymnastics as you vault over them.
Librarian gymnastics. Let's go dodge.
Okay, roll away.
All the luck I need.
You won't have any luck to do that. Do you wish to push it?
I've been pushing it quite a bit this game, pushing my luck. I'm gonna do it again.
Okay, cool.
I want these children to be saved. Lucky. Not lucky.
Oh yeah, so you sort of like start to almost like try to dodge in and out of it, and all of a sudden these the little people around you sort of like see you, and one of them just sort of like grabs hold of your leg as you run past it, and you suddenly feel a bit of a tug, and you land straight down on the floor as you sort of like hit it. Can you make but at that point, as the little people suddenly realise you're here, you both see something, and within the fire underneath, there appears to be manifesting itself, coalescing in there, almost like a black sphere. With tentacles coming out of it, and it seems to be almost like getting more and more solid as the fires go higher and higher and higher, and also this the screaming and the howling goes really loud. Roll, Mr. Bleaker, roll your occult skill.
Okay. Bring in the occult. Getting some luck. Never mind.
No, and you it almost like looks familiar. This you think you might have read about it somewhere, but you're not too sure at all. Yes, Peabody, what would you like to do? You can see that over to one side, Mr. Bleaker has been pounced on by two little people, but the rest of them are sort of like oblivious. You do hear the gypsies coming behind you, and you do hear more gunshots behind you as well. You're not too sure whether or not the villagers are aiming at the tattered fruit of the gypsies or aiming at the trees. You're not too sure. What would you want to do?
Bleaker knows. Peabody knows that Bleaker's armed, so he's going to take the second shot at the.
Okay, cool.
Am I doing it now?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, so that's a hit. So you can. That's at the lead guy, isn't it? Yeah. So do me some damage.
I'm going to say that it's doing the same as the 0.30 lever action.
Yeah, that's cool.
2d6 plus 4.
Yeah. Let me just see how many hit points he's got. Yeah, go for it. Yeah, so you fire a shot out at this thing, and it catches him straight in the shoulder blade at one side, and sort of like knocks him to one side. And he's sort of like you notice that the black tentacle thing sort of like almost like flickers for a moment, as if the concentration has been broken, but he seems to be completely engaged in all this and continues to shout. Yeah, Mr. Bleaker, what would you like to do?
Question. I'm being held by the little people, so I'm kind of technically like grappled.
No, you fell down on the floor and they're on top of you.
Okay, and I wouldn't just be able to stand up.
So you can stand up if you can try to stand up if you wish. That is completely possible, but you will need to make probably a dodge roll in order to do it, or a dexterity roll. I'll allow you to do either.
Would I be able to, in one turn, to pull out my gun and fire at a given target, or would that be 2 turns?
No, it depends what you want to fire at.
Okay, I was just considering my options there. I think I'm going to go with standing up, dodging, because I'm going to go with my original plan, trying to break this
Okay,
man.
So what would you like to roll, your dex or your dodge?
Technically the same thing, but I'd like to use dexterity.
Okay, cool.
Same number, I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, you sort of like clamber up to the floor, and as you do so, the little person who was astride you sort of like knock them over to one side and managed to get up. And it's at this point that the little people go. And so this is an attack roll to you. Let me see what they're 35. Yeah, and as you try to get up, they sort of like grab at you with what seems to be almost like clawed hands, but you're sort of like they weren't expecting you to actually get up straight away, and you just feel them sort of like tag onto your trousers and the tailcoat of your coat and you hear that rip, and you suddenly notice that they've probably got claws rather than normal hands. So that's the little people coming. Mr. Peabody, you do notice that two of them have turned away from their dancing and seem to be heading towards you. They seem to be carrying stone knives. Mr. Peabody, you're up.
He knows what he has to do. You hear him shout over the chanting, "Get to it, Bleaker!" And he's going to fire again.
Okay, cool. Who at?
The chieftain.
The chieftain, not the two people who are coming towards you.
No.
Okay, cool. Fire away. Fire away. Yes, nice one. Do some damage for me. The guy only had 2 hit points left in any case. So the other shot sort of like impales into his back, and he sort of like slumps forward, and you suddenly notice that there's a screaming sound, a hideous screaming sound, and the sizzle of burning flesh, because as he slumped to the ground, his head's actually gone into the fire, and it's sort of like, as he's still slightly alive, the burning sensation sort of like rips through him. Just make sand rolls for me. I figure it's quite nasty to see somebody fall into a fire and get his face burnt.
I don't even care.
Yeah, and obviously, exactly, you're not fussed anymore. You do notice that the little people are sort of like, it looks as if they don't know what to do. They're just seeing sort of like, they look back and they look over and they just see you, Mr. Peabody, with your rifle still up, obviously shot their priest or something like that, and they're sort of like looking around, and you notice that some of them have started to head off away from you, and almost like running off into the moors. Now at this point, Bleaker, you get to the fire. Now let me just check, because there's a set roll. Right. Okay, so you're going to have to jump over the fire in order to get to this thing to push it over. Yeah? So the first thing that you need to do is a jump skill for me.
I've got faith in you. Just imagine it's a library trolley.
It's just a library trolley. Okay. Okay. I could have put points in jump. Didn't. Okay, and I'm gonna push it if I have to. I'm gonna push it, guys.
Okay, push away. Roll it again.
What is it? 20?
That's base. It's fine. It's fine. It's not fine.
No, it's not fine at all. And you sort of like try to jump across it, and you sort of like you don't quite make it, and you sort of like you jump, but you jump too short, and you sort of like land straight in it, and you take this. You take 5 points of damage to your hit points, but the next thing I would like you to do, because you pushed it, I would like to roll your power times 5.
Wait, what?
Oh no, sorry, no, it's the wrong book. It's because it's a 3rd edition. So you're just rolling your power now, because it's so you just need to roll a normal power roll and get below it. Yeah, and you sort of like don't get below it, and you suddenly notice that your hair and your clothes are actually on fire. It looks like they were maybe doing something, like pitch, burning something. Sorry, maybe like pitch or something like that, and you can see that it's stuck on your clothing, on your hair. Okay, then you reach the Wicker Man, and of course, you wish to knock it over, don't you? Right, I just need to fire.
Please strength, please strength, please strength. If I have to climb this thing, I'm gonna die.
No, strength is good. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I failed a lot, but this is the roll, you guys. I'm gonna succeed. I'm not gonna make a fool of myself. I want to spend a single point of luck to not be a fool.
Yeah, and you sort of like just head towards it, and then at the last minute you think, I'm not going to make this, I'm not going to make it, and then you just turn your shoulder slightly and you whack into one of the legs of the Wicker Man, and the Wicker Man falls backwards, sort of like part in the flames and part out of the flames. And Mr. Peabody, you see the whole Wicker Man sort of like go down and sort of like crash down before it. And it's one of those huge amount of flames that sort of like go up in the air. Okay, little people, the ones down here, you can see the dead man, the dead priest, that is slowly having his head burnt off. The two little men get to you, Mr. Peabody, and will be making their attack rolls. These have got knives, have they?
Yes, you did say knives.
Yeah, so cheers. 40.
I bet they killed the outsiders.
44 is a miss. But 16 is a hit. Okay, do you wish to dodge? It's not an evade, it's just a dodge. So you have an option now. You can either fight back. You can either dodge, okay, or you can fight back. Okay, so if you dodge and the attacker wins, then both, if the attacker wins with a high level success, it's a draw. Okay, the attacker wins if it gets higher than yours. So its attack roll is 16. So if you sort of like get, what's your dodge roll?
30.
30. So as long as you roll, succeed and get above 30, above 16, okay, you will win and you'll take no damage. Okay, alternatively, you can fight back, and if you fight back, you will be using your weapon as some kind of a club, and you'll roll you should have a brawl skill, fighting brawl. So that's what you would win. Well, and then if you both draw, if you win and get better than me, then you take no damage. If I win and better than you, I get the damage. If you're both equal, both normal successes, then you actually, the initiator actually wins.
Okay, so what he's going to do probably is after he's taken the shot and seen them coming, he'll probably get hold of the actual barrel of the gun. He's got his leather gloves on, so
yeah,
his hands will be, and he'll probably try to defend himself with that rather than.
Okay, cool. So you take a massive swing with your rifle.
So I'm going to use my fighting brawl.
Yeah, fighting brawl.
Okay.
You fail, so it wins, therefore, and it will, the knife, you feel the knife sort of like cut into you. You take 3 points of damage off your hit points.
What happens when your hit points go down to 0?
You fall unconscious.
I fall unconscious.
Okay, so Mr. Peabody falls to the ground unconscious there. Cool. Okay then, so that Mr. Peabody, it's your turn now, but you're on the ground. Bleaker, it's your turn now.
I'm on fire, so my goal is to throw myself and become one with the snow as soon as I can.
Yeah. What do you want to do with? Do you wish to do anything with the children in the Wicker Man?
Yes. Once I put myself out, then I'm going to go to try and pry open so that they can get out.
Okay then, so so you sort of like try to roll around in the snow for a while, and you notice that you can stop you'll stop on fire. Your hair and your scalp feels really sore, and not very pleasant, and then you start to sort of like rip things open. Just roll your strength roll for me, please. I just need to know how long it's going to take.
Right. Okay. I lifted textbooks for hours for this. Yes, I did.
Yeah, and you actually sort of like reach down and snap something, and it obviously must be a important part of the structure, because all of a sudden the children tend to sort of like break out of this and start to quite naturally flee the scene out into the across Darkmere, away from the flames. And it is 8:30, so we will take our break as roll 20 just refreshes itself.
But it hasn't at my end.
Has for me. It's coming back. So we will catch up. So we're going to take a quick 10-minute break, guys, and we will be back shortly. So please do not go away. Let me just find my 10-minute break. Here we go. And we are back. So just a quick recall. I think I'm right in saying that Mr. Bleaker, you are on the opposite side of the fire. You've toppled over the Wicker Man and broke out some of the branches to sort of like release the children who have gone off to the Darkmere, running off into Darkmere. And Mr. Peabody, you're unconscious on the floor. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the last thing you know. So you notice, Mr. Bleaker, that the children go off. You also notice and hear the sound of gunfire and also wailing and screaming. And as you look over, you see that the little humans are sort of like running away. And you do notice that, and just roll me a spot hidden, Mr. Bleaker. You actually notice for the first time the eagle tor, the standing stone, and only because you're sort of like watching these people, these little people, and they seem to be running to the stone and almost like walking into it, or jumping into it, as if there's some kind of doorway there or some description, and they seem to be heading in. You can also like look back, and the trees that were there almost sort of like seem to be shrinking back into the ground and almost like leaving these stabbed or impaled gypsies, and even some of the villagers just sort of like lying prostrate on the ground, bleeding out. And you notice that there's you look back and you see Mr. Peabody is lying on the floor, obviously dead, or maybe dead, as you see something raise its dagger and sort of like impale him with it. And then you suddenly hear a crack of a rifle as one of the gypsies sort of like takes the little man out, who sort of like falls dead on the floor. And then everybody sort of like comes round, both gypsies and villagers together, and you can hear them shouting for their children, and some of them who have run off in the into the darkness, into the gloom, suddenly realise that it's their parents calling them, and they sort of like turn back and go off and sort of like embrace them. And you notice that Ursula's there, and Mackenzie comes along and picks her up and puts her into the sleigh. And you go over to the lying on the floor form of Mr. Peabody. He seems to have what appears to be some kind of knife wound on his stomach. What do you wish to do?
Let's see, my first aid at base. Oh, my base isn't bad for first aid. I'm gonna attempt to I guess with the base skills, I'm presuming I would try to put pressure on and try and bind him.
Depending on what you do, you might fumble, which...
In which case you put your hand in and pull out a bit of intestines. Oh my god.
Yeah, you sort of like push down on the wound, and you see the blood sort of like seeping out from your fingers, and then you notice the old woman, if you remember, that sort of like gave you the sort of like directions here. You suddenly see that she's actually come quite almost like sprightly. She's arrived, and she sort of like tuts and sort of like pushes you away as you sort of like take your hands off and see that your hands are covered in Mr. Peabody's blood. And she sort of like mutters something and sticks something in her mouth and chews on it for a bit, and then almost like starts to push it into the wound. And then she sort of like grabs one of your blood stained hands and sort of like presses it down onto the wound. And she sort of like looks at you, and she sort of like turns around and says, "It's to stop the bleeding." And she sort of like heads off. with the rest of the gypsies, and eventually Mackenzie comes over. You're able to, both of you, lift up this unconscious form of Mr. Peabody and put him back into the sleigh. And it seems almost like the villagers and the gypsies are sort of like looking at each other, almost like two gangs, eyeing each other up, sort of like trying to gain some kind of indication. But a lot of the women are sort of like pulling them away from the confrontation, with hanging on to their children, as well as they sort of like part the separate ways, and heads back to either the gypsy wagon or to the Bargrove village. And Mackenzie puts you onto the sledge and sort of like drives you back to Bargrove Hall. Mr. Peabody, you're put straight to bed, as you might suspect, and it's actually a good amount of pressure that Mr. Bleaker puts on. And as you eventually are back safely, and you do hear the ringing of the bells, almost as if they are heralding a new beginning, almost like saying, this is, we've been victorious in the recapturing or capturing or rescuing the young children. So the only other thing that you notice and is Lady Allingham has been in her room with Dr. Green, and you notice that for the first time ever throughout the night, Miss Dr. Green and Mr. Bleaker, you sort of like keep watch, and there's no strange occurrences at all. It's as if everything's been sort of like almost like stopped overnight. And it's while you wake up the next morning, you notice that as you look out your bedroom window, down stood still in the snow at the back of the house, there is the old gypsy woman. And she just seems to be stood outside in the snow. I'll put you onto the map of the ground. So Mr. Peabody, you've got a hit point back now, so you are conscious. And can you are you on my map? Yeah. She seems to be stood here.
I'd like to go out and thank her, and since I'm concerned about Mr. Peabody, I'll ask if you'd like to go out with me to thank the lady. She saved your life,
Peabody will accompany him. He'll be there, putting most of his weight probably on his walking cane.
Yeah, and and you sort of like keep the other hand across your stomach where the wound is quite remarkable. Even Dr. King's quite impressed by it. It's almost as if it's got a plug of something stopping it, but at the same time, the dried blood has made some kind of a seal. And you've got bandages round it, but the bleedings appear to have stopped, which is the positive. And you notice that the old woman is this sort of like out there, and when she sort of like looks up, she uses one of her skills, which I think is the best skill ever.
Is it a toothless twin skill?
No, it is her smile knowingly skill.
Oh, classic Call of Cthulhu.
which I just think is fantastic. 43. Yeah, she manages to smile knowingly at you, and you sort of like walk up, and as you get there, she sort of like almost like grabs your hand, Mr. Beaker, and sort of like and she sort of like looks at it, and you feel her rough hands over yours. She's just going to try another skill because she's cool.
Is that her skill? Be cool.
Oh, look at that. I could roll nothing but 43s today. And she sort of like looks at your palm and she says, "You have great things to come. It would seem this is not the end of dabbling with what should not be dabbled with." And Mr. Peabody, she sort of like, even though you try to get out of her way, she grabs yours quite quickly and sort of like looks at it, and she rolls her skill once more. Oh, so close. And she sort of like looks at you and she sort of says, "You will learn in time to come that not all that glitters is gold, young man." And she sort of like, with a bony finger, she sort of like pokes you in your stomach very close to your wound. You sort of flinch as she does it. And she says, "I do believe that you were both, shall we say, helpful in the current plight."
Thank you. And thank you for helping my friend not die.
Yes.
Not good.
Peabody is sort of like clear his throat a bit, sort of like uncomfortable. Sort of, yes, my colleague here, Bleaker, says that I may well indeed owe you a debt of gratitude for helping me. Yes, when I was injured. So.
Ah, yes. I know some secrets I do to help people. When you get to my age, you know a lot.
Yes. Attacked by children, I was.
No.
Children with knives.
No. She says, those were not children. They were the fairies, the hobgoblins, the nastiness, the people who came for revenge on Sir William.
I think I killed their leader. Good shot it was. Straight through the shoulder blades.
Sadly,
Bad condition, so.
sadly, he will return. But up to now, for the next few years, things will be safe. And I thought I would do you a favour since you returned my grandson to us. And she's sort of like almost like seems to utter some very strange words, and she sort of like from within her robes, her many layers of clothing in the cold weather, she whips out what appears to be like a hen's foot, and she sort of like waves it up in the air every now and again, and then eventually sticks it back into her clothing and says, "You will be pleased to know I have lifted the curse on the Allinghams. As long as they leave the standing stones alone, I don't think the Fae will try to do them harm anymore."
Everybody would just look at Bleaker and sort of like cough, sort of more like a scoffy cough than.
And she sort of like looks at you and says, "You still don't believe? Yes, when you get to my age, you will do, after you've seen so many things that I have seen."
Thank you.
Your thanks is not required. Oh, the Allinghams will live safely for the next decade or so. But they will return, the Fae, and they will try to summon their master once again, but not for a few years. And I think the lady now understands not to mess with things she does not know the true meaning of. And she sort of like goes to walk away, and she sort of like turns and starts to totter off, and then she stops and she comes back. She turns around to you and says, "They will return, maybe, but not for tonight, so sleep well." And she sort of like goes hobbling off. Lady Allington is somewhat still fragile. She's still in a room, and when you're allowed to see her, she looks very pale. And Dr. King sort of like mentions that she will get better, but currently she's still in some kind of temporary insanity for what's gone on and what's happened. Ursula seems to be unharmed physically, but as you stay a few more days at Bargrove Hall, you do hear are woken up sometimes in the dead of night by Ursula's screams, and she relives the horror of what had happened, and how it had first of all maybe killed her father, but also how it might have killed her maybe as well. Now, of course, eventually you then get to the point that it's time to head home. And on your trip back down to London from Darkmere, you suddenly notice that the moor is somewhat more bright and colourful. And even though there's a thick layer of snow there, the sun's glinting off it and making it almost like a jeweled surface. And even as you look up, the snow-laden clouds have gone, and there's that crisp, spring-like blue sky overhead that gives you the promise of warmer weather to come. And you sort of like head back to Princetown, and it's there that you pick up what could only be called as a local mag or gazette, and you notice that the prisoner has been caught and sent back to prison, and you head back off from Princetown. Say again, sorry?
What was his name?
Bill the Butcher. Butcherer. And you sort of like head back on the train, and as you journey back, you gain some benefits from the adventure. So the first thing is you both get 1 point of sanity for surviving the little person. Unfortunately, you don't get the 1d points for killing what they were going to summon, but that's probably just as well. You do have, you can roll, each one of you can roll, you can do it now, 1d4. Right, so that's your sanity increase for virtually lifting the curse, and because you saved the children, saved Reuben and got the curse lifted. And then can you roll 1d6? And that's the amount of sanity you get for rescuing the children. And many of the children will probably blank out the horrors, or repress their memories, and maybe sometime rising in later years with the unpleasant thoughts, but until then you're not too sure what's going to happen. When you leave, you do hear that Lady Allingham is going to have take a well-earned rest to go abroad, and maybe to sort of like try to remove herself from Bargrove as much as it can. And even as you're leaving on the train, you almost like swear that you can hear the bells of the church at Bargrove Village ringing out more and more on a daily basis, as they totally sort of like say, you know, that goodness has returned. And it's a couple of weeks later that you notice, when you're sat back in the Carlton Club, that you notice that it would appear that Bargrove Hall is up for sale, and that Lady Allingham and her entourage have decided to stay abroad in somewhere that is a lot warmer and free of snow, and of course free of curses. And there ends the adventure of the Burnt Man mystery.
We didn't do too bad, I don't think.
Well done.
We succeeded.
Is there anything that you would like to ask me to join any pieces together that you may not have linked
So
up?
was it the fairies in the house?
Yes, it was.
Knew it.
What was the footsteps outside the window? Were those
That was the barefooted fairies.
right?
Yeah.
And
Everything.
and did they kill the villagers?
Yes. So
the outsiders.
they killed the outsiders when they came to get the children ready for their summoning. And if you were interested, they was about to summon. And I don't know a lot about the stories, but I think you may.
I only know that one beginning with S. What was it? What's he called? Sogloff or something like that.
Oh, that would have not been good. I love them. Dark Young are fun.
Yeah, and I've got the stats here. He would have had its tentacle would have damaged people. The tentacle to hit would have been 80%, and then the damage itself was a 1d3. However, he has a bonus damage of plus 4d6s.
Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah.
We could have taken him.
Yeah,
We should next time. We'll let him get summoned.
he had 31 hit points, but luckily he had three rounds almost to summon him, but you actually took him out in the second shot, I think, or third shot, before he completed it. And the idea would be that the children would burn in the sacrifice to it, for it to appear and do damage. So basically, as you probably figured out, the Colonel, Sir William, tore down the fairy's stone, and so they weren't happy, and so they were reaping revenge, but waiting for a certain time to summon the Dark Young, and so they were almost like being mischievous up to that point, hence the haunting. Just to let you know, Ursula wasn't mad or something. She just had taken the death of her father quite brutally, and that's why she mentioned him at the dining room table.
Did Lady Allingham have anything to do with it?
No, nothing at all. If anything, she was...
I thought she'd maybe try to summon Lord Allingham to, sort of like in a seance or something.
It's interesting since you mentioned that, because they had seances, and that's why they had them in the chapel.
Mm-hmm.
And they had tried to summon him, but if anybody had asked about it, that they had not had any response, and I think at one point you were going to try to do a séance.
It was one of the things that I said in the in the chat about one of our ways forward might be to try to do a séance and see whether or not we could actually get in touch with him.
Yeah, and that was there for doing that would have actually meant that you realise that there was no connection. So William wasn't actually there anymore. And really what they just wanted to do was annoy it or drive people insane. There was this wonderful picture that I didn't actually get a chance to use. But I wanted to use it. I'm just putting it on the map now. Can you see it? So that's one of the little ones, sort of like getting into the house or opening the window, or something like that. But it was. I thought it was a very clever. Yeah, go.
Was the chicken bones? Was it the?
Just about to ask that.
Was it the showing the stones, and then one had been?
No, it was just like I literally I literally made that up on the spot. Because the I don't know if you remember, but last week you went off in a completely different direction, and I think there was details in the adventure for one haunting night.
We stayed 2 nights.
Yeah, so anything that happened in the second night, like the blood over the upturned picture frame, the
snowballs,
all that I
2 points of damage.
Yeah, all that I literally made it. The horses seeing it outside, the shadow, etc., etc. All that was literally, I had to make that up on the fly as you stayed another night, because I didn't have anything. There was nothing in the adventure that said. The only thing that was interesting.
Hey, when you're getting paid £10 a day, you stay an extra night.
Oh yeah, it says. This is what it actually said. It says. It is possible that the investigators may conduct a séance in an attempt to contact Sir William's spirit. As he does not haunt Bargrove Hall, the séance has little effect, although it gives the keeper ample opportunity to play upon the investigators' fears and tensions as they sit around a candlelit table. And then the dreamer saw the events of the night in the whatchamacallit, in your dream. You saw the events in your dream, I think, Mr. Bleaker, and that was literally the highest power.
So the fairies killed him then?
Yeah. They for knocking down their standing stone. And it actually says, assuming the investigators do set up ghost traps and sit it late up, they hope to find a glimpse of some kind of apparition. They will only have limited success. Signs of haunting, dramatic falls in temperature, manifestations of ectoplasm, footprints of bare feet, the child of a human, found to be tracking through flour, or so forth and so on. So that's where all that came in. What did you just say? Lady Allingham was just bitter and twisted.
I was under the impression that she had tried to almost like commune with her husband.
Oh my God, yeah.
Gone wrong with it, and that his spirit had been. This is me rather than Peabody. Yeah. His spirit was, and he was angry about it, and that's why he was destroying stuff.
No, basically he had hired the outsiders to remove the standing stone, which was one of the 4 that linked the ley lines together, and hence why it was back. And you could have gone with Reuben back to the Gypsy Camp, and that's when you would have met Maria, the gypsy that you met in the end, who's actually a fortune teller, and she knew about the curse. She has explains that it cannot be lifted until an Allingham man repents of the murder his ancestor committed long ago. It says very matter once fallen silent, they will be told to leave. And she just was a typical gypsy.
Well, she didn't try to sell us pegs. So
no, she was a little bit more mysterious than that. And then the rest of the adventure ran according to you could have got on to, if you had summoned the Dark Young, then you would have escaped via the sleigh, and there was the opportunity to drive the sleigh if you wished, and to try to sort of like get out of the way of things. And then there was if you fumbled on it, you actually tipped the sleigh over, and things like that. So, but no, it was. I quite liked the overall feel of it, because I think there was lots of things that it could be. And
I enjoyed the adventure. I did. It was. I mean, it's one of those ones that there was so many things, and even if you're like Peabody, you didn't believe in fairies. There was other things that you could have.
Oh yes.
Put it to,
and I think the other thing is that I think in Call of Cthulhu there always has to be that sign that it could be something else, because that's probably how you stay sane in the running of things, which is important.
Do we get can I roll my luck and stuff now, just so that my character's up to date?
Yes, by all means.
So you have to roll over your luck, don't you? To get on a D100 to get a...
No, you have to roll. It's just like a normal skill improve, isn't it? So you have to roll under it. Yeah. So the higher your luck, the harder it is to get a success. So if you had one luck,
yeah,
unless
you get over one.
Yeah. So what's your luck at the moment?
1.
Yeah, so roll a 1d100. You have to get above 1. Yeah, so now you can roll a 1d10. And you get 7 back. What's yours at, Mr. Bleaker?
18. 18 luck, rolling to beat it.
Yes, yeah, 1d10.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 6 points back. So your skills are the same.
You have to get over your skill.
Yeah.
Okay, so
but only the skills that you have rolled.
Okay.
And been successful in.
Dodge is 30.
Yeah. So that again 1d10.
I didn't get over 30.
No. Oh yes, sorry, yes. That's right, yeah.
So that's nothing, yeah?
Yeah.
Firearms is 65.
Okay. Yeah, that goes up.
How much?
1d10.
1d10 even for those, yeah?
Yeah, I'm sure it is. 3.
Library use.
Yeah.
Is 60.
Okay. No.
Psychology is 10.
Okay. Yeah, just 1d10 for that. 8 points.
Nice.
And spot hidden is 55.
Okay. Yeah, I do. 1d10. 4. Yeah.
Okay, and that is me done. Thank you.
No listen skill.
Oh yeah, sorry. Listen. Yeah. Is 50.
Okay. Yeah, 1d10. 5 points to that. Excellent. Did you fumble any of your rolls?
I don't think I did.
No. Cool. What about you, Mr. Pickles?
First one is dodge at 45.
Cool. Yeah. It's nice.
Nice.
Cool.
Let's bump that up real quick. Next one is history at 55.
Nope. Nope.
Library use at 70. Definitely gonna get this one. Oh, well,
Yes.
okay. Rude. Proved me wrong. Up to 75. My next one is listen, which I won't get because it's an 80.
No.
Let's see. Proved it right there. Occult 55.
Yeah, I do.
Yes. This is the one I want 10 on.
Ooh,
Nice.
55 plus 9 is 64.
Yeah.
Mathematics. Spot hidden at a 45.
Yes, nice.
Getting some good bad rolls here. 2.
Still worth it.
Oh, yeah. Stealth at a 50. Nope. And that is all for me.
Cool. The only other thing I had to say is that you could have explored Princetown if you wished. And
True.
and anybody who was like into law could have gone to the police station there and met up with Constable Halifax, who works there, and you would have got more information. And the just so you realise it wasn't you, the no, me can't do that. Nice. The station master was exactly how he would be. With anybody, he was just he was just like that, full stop. So there was no slight way around that. Yeah, so that was the mystery of the burnt man. So that was that one, and then the one before it was the Night of the Jackal. Which we've done as well, so that's 2.
They were both from the Gaslight one.
They were both from the Gaslight because I decided to play them from the Gaslight one. I've actually got a whole load. I think there's some in the Keeper's book at the back. I'm sure there is.
Sounds right.
Scenarios.
Would that be set in sort of like 1920s one? They would need to be adapted.
Yeah, well, that's the problem is that there's no more adventures set in Victorian times now. Commercially produced one. That's it now. So, but I mean, the thing is, if we want to play, we'll see what people want to do next week. And it's whether or not I've got time between now and then. But I was watching. I actually downloaded another group of them. Is it this one? I found something called 40 Adventures for Call of Cthulhu, and they're very simple. The bad thing about it is that they don't have very many maps.
Right.
But the advantage is that this one that I'm looking at is actually set in Scotland, but in the 1920s.
But I mean, it should be able to be. I mean, you can adapt it, I suppose.
Yeah, and these are. I'm not too sure what these are like, but I have have you done the ones in the Keeper's book, Mr. Pickles?
Oh.
I did one. I think it's called The Haunting in the previous edition of Call of Cthulhu. That was pretty simple, but I enjoyed it a lot. Otherwise, I've mostly only looked in like the Blood Brothers Call of Cthulhu source book for adventures.
Right.
I haven't looked at any of them.
I'm just seeing how many.
I thought Bleak was going to get his pistol out and go ham on people.
I realized what I had to do, and And then you yelled it, and I knew that I had to do it. I was there to save kids and not have the lady die at the end of the adventure like our first time.
Is Crimson Letters the ones that you've done?
Crimson Letters?
Yeah.
Let me just check to see if it's actually in this version. Some pictures. Roaring 20s. Nice players. Wait, am I in the right? I'm in the investigator handbook. What am I doing?
Yeah, it must be in. See, these in the back of the Keeper's book are huge. They're like the ones that we've just done. You know, it's not just sort of like a couple of adventures. There's a lot more than that. And I sort of like think that if it's... How long did... This has been taken 4 sessions, this one.
Yeah.
But the last one took a lot longer, didn't it?
Oh yeah, the Night of the Jackals. That was a
I think that
endeavor.
Yeah, I think that took a huge amount of time. So, like, what I'll do is that we can have a chat in Discord about it. I've messaged Longshanks and said, are you coming back next Thursday? Can you still play? Please let me know. So we can go from there, and then we can decide how many sessions that we've got, and what we're going to do with it. Yeah, there's some nice pictures. I had a picture of him ready for you as well, for the Dark Young. So brilliant. So well done. Another adventure in the bag, which is cool. And which screen are you? I'm just going to move you back onto this.
Now we're on the lantern one.
Yeah, starting screen. So if you are in chat, then thank you for hanging out with us tonight. We really do appreciate it. And we will be hopefully back. We'll definitely be back on Saturday for some more role play when we play some Mithras. And I think the party have just joined a caravan. I think. Have you just arrived at a town?
No, we've just joined the caravan.
Oh, just joined the caravan. Cool. And so they're going to have to be doing some jobs, and we'll see how good they are at jobs. Of course, they've got no money now, I don't believe.
Well, I need to talk to you about that. But
yeah. Oh, right. So I don't think they've got any money. I think they've lost their money, etc. So we'll be back on Saturday for some fantasy role-playing games. I'll probably be streaming tomorrow night and ESO Saturday afternoon. So if you've enjoyed watching tonight, then please do press the follow button and join us next time. Until then, can I say to each and every one of you, please remember to be who you are and say what you think, because the people who mind don't matter, and the people who matter don't mind. And please remember, anything that's happened in tonight's scenario is just make-believe, and none of these things really exist. Just let's finally say to each and every one of you, sleep well, and we'll catch you all later. Happy gaming, guys, and gone chink.